The McDonnell Douglas F-4 Phantom II is an American tandem two-seat twin-engine all-weather long-range supersonic jet interceptor and fighter bomber that was developed by McDonnell Aircraft for the United States Navy. Proving highly adaptable, it entered service with the Navy in 1961 before it was adopted by the United States Marine Corps and the United States Air Force, and by the mid-60s it had become a major part of their arms. Phantom production ran from 1958 to 1981 with a total of 5,195 aircraft built, making it the most produced American supersonic military aircraft in history and cementing its position as a signature combat aircraft of the Cold War. The Phantom is a large fighter with a top speed of over Mach 2.2. It can carry more than 18,000 pounds or 8,400 kilograms of weapons on 9 external hardpoints, including air-to-air missiles, air-to-ground missiles, and various bombs, and fuel drop tanks. The F-4, like other interceptors of its time, was initially designed without an internal cannon. Some later models incorporated an internal M61 Vulcan rotary cannon. Beginning in 1959, it set 15 world records in flight performance, including absolute speed record and absolute altitude record. The F-4 was used extensively during the Vietnam War. It served as principal air superiority fighter for the United States Air Force, Navy, and Marine Corps, and became important in the ground attack and aerial reconnaissance roles late in the war. During the Vietnam War, all 5 American servicemen who became aces. 1 U.S. Air Force pilot, 2 weapons system officers, 1 U.S. Navy pilot, and 1 radar intercept officer did so in F-4s. The F-4 continued to form a major part of U.S. military air power throughout the 1970s and 80s, being gradually replaced by more modern aircraft such as the F-15 Eagle and F-16 Fighting Falcon in the U.S. Air Force, and F-14 Tomcat in the U.S. Navy, and F-A-18 Hornet in the U.S. Navy and U.S. Marine Corps. F-4 Phantom II remained in use by the U.S. in reconnaissance and wild weasel suppression of enemy air defenses roles in the 1991 Gulf War, finally leaving combat service in 1996. It was also the only aircraft used by both the U.S. flight demonstration teams, the United States Air Force Thunderbirds F-4E and the United States Navy Blue Angels F-4J. The F-4 was also operated by the armed forces of 11 other nations. Israeli Phantoms saw extensive combat in several Arab-Israeli conflicts, while Iran used its large fleet of Phantoms acquired before the fall of the Shah in the Iran-Iraq War. The F-4 remains in active service with air forces of Iran, Greece, and Turkey. The aircraft has most recently been in service against the Islamic State group in the Middle East. In 1952, McDonnell's chief of aerodynamics, Dave Lewis, was appointed by CEO Jim McDonnell to be the company's preliminary design manager. With no new aircraft competitions on the horizon, internal studies concluded the Navy had the greatest need for a new and different aircraft type, an attack fighter. In 1953, McDonnell Aircraft began work on revising the F-3H Demon naval fighter, seeking expanded capabilities and better performance. The company developed several projects, including a variant powered by a Wright J67 engine, and variants powered by 2 Wright J65 engines, or 2 General Electric J79 engines. The J79 powered version promised a top speed of Mach 1.97. On the 19th of September 1953, McDonnell approached the United States Navy with a proposal for the Super Demon, quote-unquote. Uniquely, the aircraft was to be modular, as it could be fitted with 1 or 2 seat noses for different missions, with different nose cones to accommodate radar, photo cameras, 4 20mm cannons, or 56 FFAR unguided rockets in addition to 9 hardpoints under the wings and fuselage. The Navy was sufficiently interested to order a full-scale mock-up of the F-3H-GH, but felt that the upcoming Grumman XF-9F9 and Vought XF-8U-1 already satisfied the need for a supersonic fighter. The McDonnell design was therefore reworked into an all-weather fighter bomber with 11 external hardpoints for weapons, and on 18th of October 1954, the company received a letter for intent of 2 YAH-1 prototypes. Then, on the 26th of May 1955, 4 Navy officers arrived at the McDonnell offices and, within an hour, presented the company with an entirely new set of requirements. Because the Navy had already had the Douglas A-4 Skyhawk for ground attack and F-8 Crusader for dogfighting, the project now had to fulfill the need for an all-weather fleet defense interceptor. A second crewman was added to operate a powerful radar. Designers believed that air combat in the next war would overload solo pilots with information. The XF-4H-1 was designed to carry 4 semi-recessed AAMN-6 Sparrow 3 radar-guided missiles, and to be powered by 2 J-79GE-8 engines. As in the McDonnell F-101 Voodoo, the engine sat low in the fuselage to maximize internal fuel capacity and ingested air through fixed geometry intakes. The thin section wing had a leading-edge sweep of 45 degrees and was equipped with blown flaps for better low-speed handling. Wind tunnel testing had revealed lateral instability, requiring the addition of 5-degree dihedral to the wings. To avoid redesigning the titanium central section of the aircraft, McDonnell engineers angled up only the outer portions of the wings by 12 degrees, which averaged to be the required 5 degrees over the entire wingspan. The wings also received the distinctive dog tooth for improved control at high angles of attack. The all-moving tailplane was given 23 degrees of anhedral to improve control at high angles of attack while still keeping the tailplane clear of the engine exhaust. In addition, air intakes were equipped with 1 fixed ramp and 1 variable geometry ramp with angles scheduled to give maximum pressure recovery between Mach 1.4 and Mach 2.2. Airflow matching between the inlet and engine was achieved by bypassing the engine as secondary air into the exhaust nozzle. All-weather intercept capability was achieved with the AN/APQ-50 radar. To meet requirements for carrier operations, the landing gear was designed to withstand landings with a maximum sink rate of 23 feet per second, or 7 meters a second, while the nose strut could extend by 20 inches, or 51 centimeters, to increase the angle of attack on the catapult portion of the takeoff. On the 25th of July, 1955, the Navy ordered 2 XF-4H-1 test aircraft and 5 YF-4H-1 pre-production examples. The Phantom made its maiden flight on the 27th of May, 1958, with Robert C. Little at the controls. A hydraulic problem precluded the retraction of the landing gear, but subsequent flights went more smoothly. Early testing resulted in redesign of the air intakes, including the distinctive addition of 12,500 holes to bleed off the slow-moving boundary layer air from the surface of each intake ramp. Series production aircraft also featured splitter plates to divert the boundary layer away from the engine intakes. The aircraft was soon in competition with the XF-8U-3 Crusader 3. Due to cockpit workload, the Navy wanted a 2-seat aircraft, and on the 17th of December, 1958, the F-4H was declared the winner. Delays with the J-79GE engines meant that the first production aircraft were fitted with the J-79GE2 and 2A engines. each having 16,100 pounds force of afterburning thrust, or 71.8 kilonewtons. In 1959, the Phantom began carrier suitability trials, with the first complete launch recovery cycle performed on the 15th of February 1960 from Independence. There were proposals to name the F-4H Satan and Mithras. In the end, the aircraft was given the less controversial name Phantom II. The first Phantom being the McDonnell jet fighter, the FH-1 Phantom. The Phantom II was briefly given the designation of F-110A and named Spectre by the United States Air Force, and the Tri-Service Aircraft Designation System, F-4, was adopted in September 1962. Early in production, the radar was upgraded to the Westinghouse AN/APQ-72 and AN/APQ-50 with the larger radar antenna, necessitating the bulbous nose, and the canopy was reworked to improve visibility and make the rear cockpit less claustrophobic. During its career, the Phantom underwent many changes in the form of numerous variants developed. The United States Navy operated the F-4H-1, redesignated F-4A in 1962, with the J-79 GE2 and 2A engines of 16,100 pounds force thrust, and later builds receiving the 8 engines. A total of 45 F-4As were built. None saw combat, and most ended up in test or training aircraft. The United States Navy and United States Marine Corps received the first definitive Phantom with the F-4B, which was equipped with the Westinghouse APQ-72 radar, pulse only, a Texas Instruments AAA-4 infrared search and track pod under the nose, and an AN/AJB-3 bombing system, and powered by a J-79 GE8 and 8A and 8B engines of 10,900 pounds force, or 48.5 kilonewtons dry, and 16,950 pounds force, or 75.4 kilonewtons afterburner, with the first flight on the 25th of March 1961. 649 F-4Bs were built, with deliveries beginning in 1961, and VF-121 Peacemakers receiving the first examples at NAS Miramar. The United States Air Force received Phantoms as a result of Defense Secretary Robert McNamara's push to create a unified fighter for all branches of the U.S. military. After an F-4B won the Operation High Speed, quote-unquote, fly-off against the Convair F-106 Delta Dart, pretty badass name, the United States Air Force borrowed 2 naval F-4Bs, temporarily designating them F-110A in January 1962, and developed requirements for their own version. Unlike the United States Navy's focus on air-to-air interception in the Fleet Air Defense mission, the United States Air Force emphasized both air-to-air and air-to-ground fighter-bomber role. With McNamara's unification of designations, on the 18th of September 1962, the Phantom became the F-4, with the naval version designated F-4B, the United States Air Force F-4C. The first Air Force Phantom flew on the 27th of May 1963, exceeding Mach 2 on its maiden flight. The F-4J improved both air-to-air and ground attack capabilities. Deliveries begun in 1966 and ended in 1972, with 522 built. It was equipped with the J-79 GE10 engines with 17,844 pounds force, or 79.374 kilonewtons of thrust. The Westinghouse AN/AWG-10 fire control system, making the F-4J the first fighter in the world with operational look-down, shoot-down capability, a new integrated missile control system, and the AN/AJB-7 bombing system for expanded ground attack capability. The F-4N updated F-4Bs with smokeless engines and F-4J aerodynamic improvements, started in 1972 under a U.S. Navy-initiated refurbishment program called Project Beeline, quote-unquote, with 228 converted by 1978. The F-4S model resulted from the refurbishment of 265 F-4Js with J-79 GE-17 smokeless engines of 17,900 pounds force, or 79.379 kilonewtons, AWG-10B radar with digitized circuitry for improved performance and reliability, Honeywell AN-AVG-8 Visual Target Acquisition Set, or VTAS, world's first operational helmet sighting system, classified avionics improvements, airframe reinforcement, and leading-edge slats for enhanced maneuvering. United States Marine Corps also operated the RF-4B with reconnaissance cameras with 46 built. RF-4B flew alone and unarmed, with a requirement to fly straight and level at 5,000 feet while taking photographs. They relied on the shortcomings of the anti-aircraft defenses to survive, as they were unable to make evasive maneuvers. Phantom II production ended in the United States in 1979 after 5,195 had been built, 5,057 by McDonnell Douglas and 138 in Japan by Mitsubishi. Of these, 2,874 went to the United States Air Force, 1,264 to the Navy and Marine Corps, and the rest to foreign customers. The last U.S.-built F-4 went to South Korea, while the last F-4 built was an F-4EJ built by Mitsubishi Heavy Industries in Japan and delivered on the 20th of May 1981. As of 2008, 631 Phantoms were in service worldwide. While the Phantoms were in use as a target drone, specifically QF-4Cs, operated by the United States military until the 21st of December 2016, when the Air Force officially ended the use of this type. To show off their new fighter, the Navy led a series of record-breaking flights in early Phantom development. All in all, the Phantom set 16 world records. 5 of the speed records remain unbeaten until the F-15 Eagle appeared in 1975. Speed is life, quote-unquote. The F-4 pilot's slogan, as the Phantom's greatest advantage in air combat, was acceleration. Thrust, which permitted a skilled pilot to engage and disengage from the fight at will. MiGs usually could outrun the F-4 because of the high drag on the Phantom's airframe. As a massive fighter aircraft designed to fire radar-guided missiles from beyond visual range, the F-4 lacked the agility its Soviet opponents was subject to adverse yaw during hard maneuvering. Although the F-4 was subject to irrecoverable spins during aileron rolls, pilots reported the aircraft to be very responsive and easy to fly on the edge of its performance envelope. In 1972, the F-4E model was upgraded with leading-edge slats on the wing, greatly improving its high angle of attack maneuverability at expense of top speed. The J-79 had reduced time lag between the pilot advancing the throttle from idle to maximum thrust, and the engine producing maximum thrust compared to earlier engines. While landing on the USS Midway, CV-41, John Cheshire's tailhook missed the arresting gear as he mistakenly reduced thrust to idle. He then slammed the throttle to full afterburner, the engine's response time being enough to return to full thrust quickly, and he was able to get the Phantom airborne again successfully. The J-79 produced noticeable amounts of black smoke, a severe disadvantage in that it makes it easier for the enemy to spot the aircraft. 2 decades after the aircraft entered service, this was solved on the F-4S, which was fitted with the 10A engine's variant with the smokeless combustor. The lack of an internal gun was the biggest mistake on the F-4, quote-unquote, Cheshire said. Quote, bullets are cheap and tend to go where you aim them. I needed a gun, and I really wish I had one, end quote. Marine Corps General John R. Daly recalled that everyone in RF-4s wished they had a gun on the aircraft. For a brief period, doctrine held that turning combat would be impossible at supersonic speeds, and little effort was made to teach pilots air combat maneuvering. In reality, engagements quickly became subsonic as pilots would slow down in an effort to get behind their adversaries. Furthermore, the relatively new heat-seeking and radar-guided missiles at the time were frequently reported as unreliable, and pilots had to fire multiple missiles just to hit one enemy fighter. To compound the problem, rules of engagement in Vietnam precluded long-range missile attacks in most instances, as visual identification was normally required. Many pilots found themselves on the tail of an enemy aircraft but too close to fire short-range Falcons or Sidewinders. Although, by 1965, United States Air Force F-4Cs began carrying the SUU-16 external gun pods containing 20mm M61A1 Vulcan Gatling cannons. United States Air Force cockpits were not equipped with lead computing gun sights until the introduction of the SUU-23, virtually assuring a miss in maneuvering flight. Some Marine Corps aircraft carried 2 pods for strafing. In addition, the loss of performance due to drag combat showed the externally mounted cannon to be inaccurate unless frequently bore-sighted. Yet far more cost-effective than missiles, the lack of a cannon was finally addressed by adding an internally mounted 20mm M61A1 Vulcan cannon on the F-4E.